Now, meteorites come in different forms. Not everything that hits the Earth in the form of a meteor is going to be made of the same stuff because the solar system is not made of the same stuff. So many of them are rocky and icy, just like a combination of the gas giants and the terrestrial planets. When we have a meteorite that happens to be made of rock and ice, most of it burns up upon entry, and those are seldom found. The ones that are found, very often, a scientist will see it streak across the sky, kind of run to where that is, get in their little car and go, and pick up the debris, because these just do not have the solidity to actually survive the Earth's atmosphere. It's much more likely, if we're going to find a meteorite, it's going to be made of mostly iron and nickel and other kind of heavy metals. These are dense enough and strong enough to survive that high speed, high temperature impact with planet Earth. If you ever pick up a rock and you're not sure if it might be a meteorite, things you can look for: one, it's going to be slightly magnetic, and there's usually evidence of exposure to heat. It looks scorched, it looks burned and melted. And in your everyday life, you don't see a lot of rocks unless you live near volcano country. You just don't see rocks that look like that. One of the biggest meteorite impact sites around us, and it's still hundreds and hundreds of miles away, is in Sudbury, Ontario. A few years back, my husband and I took a trip through Canada and actually went up towards Sudbury because I wanted to see this meteor impact site. It looks like this today. It doesn't look like a big crater in the ground, but this is one of the largest iron mines in the world, and also nickel mines. Now, if you recall from what we talked about planet Earth, when Earth was molten, it sort of parfaited out. We have a solid iron and nickel core, and then there's a liquid core, and then we have a rocky mantle, and we have a rocky crust. Well, if this is how the Earth sort of separated out into layers when it was young and molten, how do we get iron and nickel on the surface of the Earth? A lot of that, we believe, is due to the impact of really metallic meteors. And if you can find one of these on the planet and mine it, you don't have to go deep, deep, deep into the ground because it is sort of right there. And that's what they're doing up in Sudbury, Ontario. Nickel is quite rare elsewhere on the planet. And why do we care about nickel? Well, nickel is in most of the batteries, car batteries, etc., that you and I use all the time. So it's a very precious element. We have some more familiar, close by meteorite impacts. Those of us who live in western Wisconsin, there is the Rock Elm meteorite strike that hit about 4.5 to 475 million years ago. So this was not nearby in time, but it was kind of geographically nearby. We think the meteorites came across the sky coming from the southwest and aiming towards the northeast. It hit in an area that is known as Rock Elm, Wisconsin, a very small town. If you're familiar with Wisconsin geography, this is the main highway that goes kind of through everything, which is I-94. Minneapolis-St. Paul is up here. Eau Claire area is here, and just between the two, south of the town of Spring Valley, is a littler town of Rock Elm. This is a satellite picture of the area today, and you would not know it's there. It doesn't look like a crater at all, but it is a lower area. It is a depression. And one of the reasons we know that this hit in our region is because there is a debris field of metal that flew away from that impact site. A lot of this meteor that hit contained a lot of copper. And actually one of our neighbors, one of the people that lives down the road from us about a mile, found a piece of copper in a field. And we did some research, my husband and I, a handful of years ago, and from geologist at the University of Wisconsin down in Madison got back to us, and yep, that is a piece of copper that actually became liquid, flew through the air, and then landed north and northeast of that region. So we do have these things coming in our area, but fortunately not so often. One of the other things that's kind of fun to know is when it hit, it was going about 70,000 miles an hour. Well, no wonder everything was wet and liquid and hot. The most famous meteor crater on planet Earth right now is called Meteor Crater, and it's located in Arizona. If you ever go down to Grand Canyon or south of Las Vegas in that region, you can go visit Meteor Crater. It's believed that there was a huge meteor hit about 50,000 years ago. It was about 1 kilometer in diameter, and because it was in the desert, there's not a lot of vegetation, there's not a lot of water to wash away the evidence. We still have this huge meteor site today. Some other fun things that I found in New York City in 1992, there was a 7-pound meteorite that actually hit, there's the meteorite, hit a car, and there's the damage it did to the car. Yeah, explain that one to your insurance company. Back in 1952, Ann Hodges, who lived down in Alabama, is the only known person that was hit directly by a meteorite. She was in her home, and this thing came through her roof, bounced off the radio. It was about the size of a softball, gave her one heck of a bruise, and she was fine, fortunately. But yeah, would have scared the pooey out of most people, I'm sure. There was another impact event that occurred in 1908. This is known as the Tunguska Event. The Tunguska Event has been a ponderous puzzle for a very, very long time. I first heard about this when I was in high school, and my physics teacher started talking about it. It occurred in a very remote area of Siberia, and because of that, there were no known casualties. People who were miles away reported that they saw something streak across the sky, and then they saw a big blue light of an explosion. It's occurred in an area that was swamp. So there was not a lot of building. There was not, a city or a village there. But stories of this permeated for years and years and years. So later, the Russian government sent in a series of investigators. And what they found was really, really interesting. For about 770 square miles, trees were flattened. Here's a picture from the Tunguska event. The trees were just flattened. And one of the other things that was very interesting is in some areas, the trees were standing straight up and down, totally dead, totally stripped of leaves, but straight up and down. Well, in the over 100 years since the Tunguska event, there have been over 1,000 scholarly papers written on this thing as mankind's tried to figure it out. And the best we can figure out at the moment is that some sort of meteorite or comet or something from space exploded as it came through the sky. It got so hot that it actually exploded not on the ground but above the ground. And one of the big pieces of evidence is this picture here. This was a map that was done by the former Soviet Union. There is an area where all of the trees were standing straight upright, and then there was a blast radius where the trees were all flattened as if it all came from one central region. And so it is highly believed it was either some sort of a comet or asteroid that just because of the heat as it entered the atmosphere exploded and created this. A lot of scientists think that an object about that size will hit the Earth about once every 300 years. Now, that doesn't mean because the Tunguska event occurred, we're safe for another 100 years. Those are just the odds. Sometimes you can get 2 in 2 years and then not have anything for 600 years. So that's one of the reasons we're studying asteroids and comets, is it has happened in the past. There was a Russian meteorite that hit in February 2013, and I'm going to ask you to watch a few pieces of video from this event. You don't have to watch all of it because there's a lot of video, which was really cool. We got a lot of good science out of it. But it was an early morning, and many people over hundreds of miles saw something streak across the sky. This is an actual picture of that object going through the sky. Eventually, the meteorite was found. It went through the water in a lake, and they found it, and this is the metal core. This was the actual metallic part of the meteorite that was still left. There's also, in February of 2017, there was a relatively bright meteorite that was over the city of Chicago. And I have had students that were in Milwaukee or in that corner of the Wisconsin that night and actually saw that meteorite. So all of these things are referred to as near-Earth objects, and these are comets and asteroids that come within 1.3 astronomical units of the Earth. There are about 1,000 of them that are larger than a kilometer in diameter. And the odds are 2 out of every 1,000 are going to hit the Earth every 1,000 years. Of the 300-meter wide ones, that's about 3 football fields in diameter, odds we're going to get one of those about every 100 years. So this is a huge field of research. They can do amazing amounts of damage. And if we can nudge them out of the way, this is going to be something that is important for the history of man. If we ever get hit by one that is larger, we are frightened that we might have an extinction event. And it is believed that an asteroid hit the Earth about 65 million years ago and caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. For a long time, the dinosaur extinction was a massive, massive mystery. And then these two gentlemen, Luis Alvarez and his son Walter, it's a father-son team, are geologists. And they looked at the layer between a layer of rocks called the Cretaceous era, and then a layer called the Tertiary era. And the boundary between these two eras, periods of time where dinosaurs lived, and then period of time where there were no dinosaur fossils found, between these two layers of rock, there was a high concentration of the element iridium. And iridium is very, very rare on planet Earth, but it's very common in meteorites and comets. And so they came up with a hypothesis, and the hypothesis was that a very large meteorite impacted the Earth, created massive global winter. So much debris was thrown into the atmosphere that it blocked the sun. The dinosaurs starved to death, and it was a planet-wide extinction event. Few small organisms survived, few small mammals survived, and that you and I are the ancestors of those small mammals, kind of like mice and moles that lived that for 65 million years ago. Well, recently, this has been found, and it's called the Chicxulub crater. And the Chicxulub crater, we think, is the smoking gun from the dinosaur extinction. This is in the Yucatan Peninsula, south of Louisiana, south of the Gulf of Mexico, and this is a computer-enhanced three-dimensional topographic picture of a leftover crater that we believe was the crater impact site that killed off the dinosaurs. So, is it going to happen again? Is the Earth going to be hit by something large that could kill us? Yes. And what mankind's trying to do right now is keep us all safe. So that's a very nifty and important area of science. That will do for right now. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.